Hi, I'm Lynn Blend. I'm a drag queen, a Vtuber, and an alien enthusiast, and on this channel I do videos about historical true crime and mysteries. Today we're going to be looking into a couple of cases of reported alien abductions from the 1950s, which are some of the first accounts of people claiming to have had sexual encounters with aliens. Since this is my first video covering aliens on this channel, I figured I'd introduce the topic by going over what my stance on aliens is. To sum it up, I do think that there's probably life out there in the universe, but whatever it is, it's probably not visiting Earth. The universe is infinite and ever-expanding, and humans take up such a small part of it. We will never know the vast majority of the universe. It would take faster than light travel to even be able to visit planets outside our solar system. With all that said, I think it's highly unlikely that we're the only life out there. That our planet would be the only one that has ever had conditions that could support life in billions of years, and all that infinite space feels improbable. That said, we have no idea what form that life would take. Maybe it's on a planet we'll never know about, maybe it went extinct billions of years ago, maybe it's a single-celled bacteria, who knows? The idea that life takes the form of humanoid aliens who can and do come to Earth and perform experiments on humans is also improbable. In my opinion, most UFO sightings can be explained by very human aircraft and devices. There's no way that the government or the military is covering up proof of aliens because large groups of people are terrible at keeping secrets. And most alien abduction stories can easily be explained by sleep paralysis, which, while definitely scary for the person experiencing it, is not supernatural in origin. So, if this is what I think, why are we talking about aliens today? Plain and simple, I just think they're neat. Much like with cryptids, I don't think they're real, but it would be cool if they were. I like examining stories of alien encounters and using them to learn more about the people that experience them, the pop culture and historical events that influence them, and the cultural impact of them. And that's what we'll be examining in this video. UFOs were a very big part of popular culture in the 1950s. The memory of the Roswell incident, a supposed UFO crash, which happened in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, was still fresh in everyone's minds. Speculative science fiction was extremely popular, and this had the cyclical effect of art influencing life, influencing art again. Post-Roswell, reportings of UFO sightings ramped up to unforeseen levels. Because of this cultural bias, people began explaining every unknown aircraft they saw with aliens, and the US government and military were happy for them to do so, because in actuality, they were developing secret technology for the Cold War. So speculation about aliens made a nice cover so that the Soviet Union wouldn't figure out what they were developing. With many UFO incidents, the official word from the government was, "It's not aliens, but we can't tell you exactly what it is," which fueled the fire for the whole alien cover-up conspiracy theory. This was the breeding ground for the perfect environment for alien sightings and abduction encounters to not only capture public attention, but be believed. This sets the scene for our first story, the 1957 abduction of Antonio Villas-Boas, a Brazilian farmer who lived near São Francisco de Sales. In the nights before the abduction event, Antonio and his brother reported seeing bright lights in the sky that moved strangely. On the night of October 15th, 1957, Antonio was working in the fields on his tractor when he saw a bright red light all around him. He soon saw an egg-shaped spacecraft and was taken away by 4 aliens. Antonio described the aliens as looking mostly like the stereotypical little gray aliens, but with 3 tubes coming out of each of their heads. Antonio reported that once the aliens got him onto their ship, they took his clothes, rubbed some sort of clear liquid all over his body, and took a sample of his blood. The aliens then left him to wait in a room with a bed. An hour later, a naked alien woman entered the room. Antonio described her as more beautiful than any he'd ever seen before. She was more humanoid than the other aliens, and had blonde hair and blue eyes, but was clearly non-human, with abnormally long and narrow facial features and limbs. Antonio reported having a sexual encounter with the alien woman for about another hour, and then one of the aliens came to call her away. She did not speak to him, but instead pointed to her belly, indicating that she was pregnant, and then to the sky. After this, she left, and the other aliens returned his clothes. The aliens then took him to a metal room with tables and chairs, where they communicated amongst themselves in an alien language. While they were distracted, Antonio attempted to steal a metal box-like device, which he thought could be a clock, but he was caught by one of the aliens, who took it back. The aliens then dropped him off in the field where they picked him up, about 4 hours after they had taken him. Upon returning, he discovered that his tractor had been sabotaged. For months after his alien abduction, Antonio suffered a number of symptoms that were attributed to radiation poisoning, including widespread pain, nausea, and a burning sensation in his eyes. After seeking medical attention for the symptoms, he opened up about his abduction experience and was convinced to release it to the press, which he did in February of 1958. One of the reasons why Antonio's story gained so much traction in the international UFO community at this time is the assumption that he was some unintelligent, uneducated, poor Brazilian farmer, and that he couldn't have had the imagination required to make up a story like this, which, firstly, is a pretty racist and classist assumption, but is also entirely untrue. Antonio's family were very successful and well-off farmers, which is indicated for the fact that they owned a tractor, which was very uncommon for the time and era. After this incident, Antonio even went on to university and became a lawyer. And then, of course, once that happened, those same UFO researchers claimed that he was too well-educated and respectable to have made the story up. When I personally go into trying to debunk a story like this, I don't want to go with the assumption that someone is outright lying. Of course, people can and do lie about stuff like this all the time, but I think the reason why alien abductions are such a big phenomenon is that a lot of people who have these experiences truly believe that they happened. Instead, I want to take a look at other more common explanations for what could have possibly happened. I'm not necessarily interested in debunking the abduction itself, because it could be caused by anything from a dream to a hallucination to sleep paralysis. So what I really wanted to look into this time were other things that could have caused Antonio's radiation poisoning symptoms. Now, I need to preface this by saying I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I don't know anything, I could just be being a clown, but from the little bit of research that I've done, I wanted to throw a theory out there that could have been a natural source of the radiation that could have given Antonio radiation poisoning symptoms. Antonio reported having these experiences after tilling the fields on his tractor, and the types of fertilizers he could have been using could have exposed him to radon gas, which causes similar symptoms to people who are exposed to it in large amounts. For now, let's move on to our second alien abduction story, the account of Elizabeth Klarer. Elizabeth is a South African woman whose lengthy history of alien abductions started in 1954. She reported that she had had experiences of seeing UFOs since she was a child. Her first UFO sighting occurred when she was 7, when her and her older sister Barbara saw a silver disc in the sky while they were outside their family's farmhouse. They also observed a red-orange planet-like object floating above the disc. The flying saucer then flew towards the planet and vanished. It was in 1954 when Elizabeth's abduction encounters would begin. She and her family were living in Johannesburg at the time, when her sister May told her that the native Zulu people living around her family's old farm had told her stories about an apparition in the sky that they were calling the lightning bird. Elizabeth then traveled back to her hometown, and on the 27th of December in 1954, she walked up a nearby hill, which would come to be known as Flying Saucer Hill. It was there that she first made contact with an alien, who she would later come to know as Akon. She reported that his spaceship was similar in construction to the one she saw as a child. It was a silver disc with a dome in the center. The disc-shaped hull spun and the craft hovered above her. Akon did not disembark the ship, but Elizabeth could see him through the portholes in the ship's dome. She described him as very humanoid, tall and slender, with light skin, short blonde hair, and light eyes. A year and a half later, on April 7th, 1956, Elizabeth heard the rumors of the lightning bird starting up again, so she returned to Flying Saucer Hill. This time, Akon took her aboard the craft. She met another alien on the ship who was Akon's co-pilot. This second alien was heavier set than Akon with darker skin. The three of them began to make the trip back to their mothership. On the way, Akon gave Elizabeth a lens which allowed her to see through solid walls. The alien's mothership was shaped like a giant cigar, and the interior of the ship was a lush garden. Elizabeth met other aliens aboard the ship, and then spent time with Akon alone. Akon told her that he and other aliens were from the planet Venus, and Elizabeth was the reincarnation of his Venusian soulmate. Akon also told her that Venusian men will sometimes come to Earth to take human women as partners, and that the resulting hybrid offspring would strengthen their race. He also claimed that there were Venusian aliens living on Earth in secret. Elizabeth perceived this encounter as less of an abduction and more of a romantic outing, and she reported that the pair of them kissed several times. Akon then returned her to the hilltop. By a few months later, Elizabeth's family had sold their farm, and on July 17th, 1956, she visited the hill again. This time, she spotted Akon's ship flying overhead, and she took pictures to try to prove her story. April of 1958 is when Elizabeth claimed that her alien pregnancy began. Akon took her to Cathkin Peak, where he gave her a silver ring to enhance their telepathic connection. The two of them then conceived a child together. Elizabeth carried the pregnancy to term on Earth, and then in 1959, Akon took her to his home planet to deliver the baby. Elizabeth was not able to stay with Akon and the child, however, as the environment of the planet was not suitable for human life. Elizabeth claimed to be visited by Akon and their son throughout her life, all while leading a life on Earth with her husband and family at home. She would later write a book about her experience in 1980, called Beyond the Light Barrier. When it comes to debunking Elizabeth's account, we don't have that much evidence to go off of, aside from her story itself. The one piece of evidence Elizabeth provided was that photo she took in 1956 of an alien spacecraft. Skeptics analyzing the photo, however, have claimed that it looks like she took a picture of someone throwing a car hubcap in the air. Looking at this photo, personally, I'm unconvinced. I agree that the hubcap theory is pretty likely. As for the rest of the story, there's not only no evidence of it actually happening, but there's no evidence that Elizabeth was ever even pregnant at the time that she claimed to be. I figured I'd also look into the ring that Akon gave her and see if that was anything, and I did manage to find a picture of it, but no additional information. In my mind, the biggest nail in the coffin for debunking both of these stories is the fact that it would be extremely unlikely that humans and aliens would even be able to interbreed, much less that that hybrid would be successful enough that aliens would even want to do that. There are examples of different species on Earth being able to interbreed. For example, a horse and a donkey making a mule, a lion and a tiger making a liger. But in the modern day, there is no other species able to interbreed with humans. If humans can't interbreed with any other species on the planet, why would it be possible for us to interbreed with a different species from an entirely different planet? The last species on Earth that was able to successfully interbreed with Homo sapiens was the Neanderthals. And the only reason that worked is because they were 99.7% genetically identical to us. Bonus fun fact, most people on the planet today have about 2% Neanderthal DNA. For a comparison, a modern human's closest living relative is a chimpanzee, which shares about 98% of our DNA. Humans cannot interbreed with chimpanzees, and I think I speak for everyone when I say, thank God. The idea that there would be another species that's not even from this planet, evolved in a completely separate environment that we wouldn't share any common genetic ancestors with, that would be that genetically similar to humans, is pretty much impossible. Even if it were possible for humans and aliens to interbreed, why would aliens even want to do that? If, for example, we look at the liger, it's considered very unethical to breed them because they commonly have a lot of health issues and don't live very long. Who's to say that a human-alien hybrid wouldn't be the same way? What kinds of advantages would a potential human-alien hybrid even have? since this idea of human-alien hybrids didn't come into public consciousness out of scientific ideas of what's possible, I wanted to ask, where did it come from? For my theory, I want to examine this idea through the lens of an even older type of folklore surrounding dreams and sleep paralysis experiences. From centuries past all the way to today, one of the biggest ways that people's wants, desires, and fears are expressed is through their subconscious and their dreams. I thought that this idea of having a sexual encounter with an unexplainable creature sounded really familiar to me. And in my opinion, I think alien abduction stories have a direct link with stories about the succubus and the incubus, who are a type of demon who have sex with humans. Think about it. Let's say you're a person in 1500s Europe. You're probably very religious, and it's a very common idea around you that demons are a real thing and that they interact with humans. You have a dream or an episode of sleep paralysis where you have a sexual encounter with an unknown creature. And from that perspective, it's easy to attribute that to being demonic. Now, imagine you have that same dream or sleep paralysis experience with an unknown creature, but instead of the 1500s, you're in the 1950s, where sci-fi movies are really popular and there are a lot of reports of UFO sightings. It's easy to see how you could attribute that same experience to aliens instead of demons. The same ideas of what an alien abduction is like have permeated through all the way to today, where there are a lot of different accounts of people's experiences with alien abduction. They all have small differences, but there's the same ideas that tie them together. There's this distinctly sexual vibe, with some people reporting having sexual encounters with the aliens, or some kind of probing-related experiment occurring. With a lot of these stories, there's the idea of being experimented on, with many abductees reported laying on a table and being immobilized in some way. These are sleep paralysis stories, the same ones that have been told for hundreds of years, except it's aliens instead of demons. Thanks so much for coming along with me while I look into these stories. Definitely let me know what you think, and if you'd like to hear about more alien encounters, since I'm interested in covering more UFO sightings and alien abductions from this era. Most importantly, thank you so much to everyone who's patiently waited for me to come back from my unplanned hiatus. I appreciate you so much. I can't promise any kind of regular upload schedule, but I do hope to be able to get videos out more frequently. Thanks so much to my Ko-fi supporters, Ruby, Salika, Lotus, Smallzy, and Andara. I truly appreciate it. You can see all of my videos early, suggest future topics, and access some exclusive videos that I made during my hiatus by supporting me at ko-fi.com/Lynn Blend. Thanks so much for watching.